3 years ago, my lawyer told me we were going to destroy the company that destroyed my life. Last week, I walked into that courtroom for the final phase of our lawsuit, and I saw my father's name listed on the defense team's witness roster. Not as a character witness for me, as a board member for Titan Defense Solutions. The same company whose faulty equipment cost me my leg and put 2 of my Marines in the ground. I need to tell you this story. Not because it has a happy ending, it doesn't, but because some of you out there might be facing the same impossible choice I faced, and maybe my mistakes can help you make better ones. My name is Captain James Mitchell, former captain, I should say, and this is about what happens when seeking justice means going to war with your own family. The injury happened on a Tuesday. Isn't that something? The day that changes your entire life and your brain holds on to details like what day of the week it was. We were 6 clicks outside of Kandahar, running what should have been a routine patrol. I say should have been because in Afghanistan nothing was ever really routine. But this was as close as it got. Checking in on a village we'd helped rebuild, making sure the Taliban hadn't rolled back through. Corporal Hayes was on point, 22 years old, kid from Nebraska who joined up because his family farm went under. He had this habit of humming country songs under his breath while we walked. Drove Sergeant Chen crazy, but I never minded it. It was human, you know? A reminder that we weren't just machines in body armor. Private First Class Rodriguez was our communications specialist. Youngest guy in the unit at 19, but sharp as they come. He could fix a radio with duct tape and wire cutters, get a signal in a valley that should have been dead. His mom sent him packages every week, homemade tamales wrapped in so much plastic they'd probably survive a direct hit. And Sergeant Marcus Chen, 10 years in the Corps, 3rd deployment. He was the guy you wanted next to you when things went sideways. Calm under fire, decisive, and loyal to a fault. He'd taken me under his wing when I was a green lieutenant, taught me how to actually lead instead of just give orders. The IED was buried under a culvert on the eastern road into the village. We'd driven over that same road a dozen times, walked it probably 50, but Titan Defense Solutions had sold the Army a new metal detector system 6 months earlier. Supposed to be cutting edge, could detect buried metal from twice the distance of the old units with a false positive rate of less than 2%. The procurement officer who'd signed off on the purchase probably got a nice promotion for saving the Department of Defense 15% on the contract. Hayes swept the road with the detector. I watched him do it. The indicator stayed green. We moved forward. The blast took Hayes instantly. He was gone before his body hit the ground. Rodriguez was 8 feet behind him. The shrapnel caught him in the neck and chest. He bled out in Chen's arms while I screamed into the radio for medevac. Chen and I were farther back, but the blast wave still picked us up and threw us like rag dolls. I remember the sensation of weightlessness, then the impact, then nothing. I woke up 3 days later in Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. My right leg was gone from just above the knee. They'd tried to save it, but the damage was too extensive. Bone fragments, severed arteries, tissue destroyed by the heat and pressure. Chen woke up in the bed next to mine. He'd taken shrapnel to his spine. The doctor said he'd never walk again. The official report called it an enemy IED, sophisticated construction, well hidden. Our metal detectors had functioned within normal parameters. Sometimes the enemy just gets lucky. But Chen and I knew better. We'd seen those detectors fail 3 times in the previous month. Each time we'd reported it up the chain. Each time we were told the equipment was functioning normally. Maybe we needed more training on proper use. Maybe we were holding it wrong. The detector hadn't failed because of user error. It had failed because Titan Defense Solutions had cut corners on the components to maximize their profit margin. We found out later, much later, that they'd substituted cheaper sensors that couldn't actually detect metal at the advertised range. The 2% false positive rate was accurate. What they didn't mention was the 40% false negative rate. But that came out in discovery during the lawsuit. I'm getting ahead of myself. The transition from active duty to civilian life is hard for everyone. For me, it was like learning to live on an alien planet. The prosthetic leg they fitted me with was state-of-the-art. Microprocessor-controlled knee, Carbon fiber construction, the works. It cost more than my first car. The VA covered most of it, and I was grateful for that. Really, I was. But it wasn't my leg. It would never be my leg. I couldn't feel the ground beneath my foot, couldn't sense temperature or pressure or texture. Going downstairs was a calculated exercise in balance and trust. Running was something I did in dreams and then woke up from. My wife Sarah tried to be supportive. She really did. But I could see it in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. The grief for the man she'd married, the one who'd left for deployment, who wasn't coming back even though I was standing right there in our kitchen. We'd been married for 5 years when I deployed, high school sweethearts who'd figured out how to make it work through college and OCS. She'd stood by me through 2 previous deployments, handled every move the Corps threw at us, learned to be both mother and father to our daughter Emma during the months I was gone. But this was different. This wasn't absence. This was presence without connection. Emma was 7 when I came home, old enough to remember the dad who'd left, young enough to be confused by the dad who came back. She'd hug me carefully, like I might break, wouldn't sit on my lap anymore because she was afraid of hurting my owie. I tried to explain that it didn't hurt, that she couldn't hurt me there because there was nothing there to hurt. But how do you explain phantom limb pain to a 7-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night screaming because your brain insists that the leg that's gone is still there and it's on fire? Chen had it worse. His wife left him 4 months after he got home. Couldn't handle the wheelchair, the constant care he needed, the man he'd become. No kids, at least. Small mercies. We'd meet up once a week at the VA. Him for physical therapy, me for prosthetic adjustments. We'd grab coffee after, sit in the parking lot, and not talk about it. Sometimes not talking about something with someone who understands is more valuable than any therapy session. It was Chen who first brought up the lawsuit. "I've been reading about those detectors," he said one afternoon. This was maybe 8 months after we'd come home. "Other units have been reporting failures, lots of them." I nodded. I'd seen some of the same reports online, buried in military forums and equipment review sites. "There's a lawyer out of DC, guy named David Brenner. He's building a class action, product liability. Says he can prove Titan knew the detectors were faulty and sold them anyway." Class action means we'd be sharing any settlement with everyone else involved. That could be hundreds of people. "It's not about the money," Chen said, and the look in his eyes was something I'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, something colder. "It's about making them answer for what they did. Hayes was 22, man. Rodriguez was 19, and they're gone because some executive wanted to hit his quarterly profit targets." He was right, of course, but I also knew what a lawsuit like that would mean. Years of legal battles, depositions, reliving that day over and over again, medical examinations, expert witnesses, the whole 9 yards. "I need to talk to Sarah," I said. Chen nodded. "Yeah, me too." Then he paused. "Well, no, not anymore, but you should talk to your wife." Sarah was against it at first. "We need to move forward, not backward. This will consume everything, James. Years of your life, our lives, Emma's life." "Hayes and Rodriguez don't get to move forward. Their families don't get to move forward," I said, and heard how bitter I sounded. "And that's terrible. It's awful. But you can't bring them back by bankrupting yourself fighting a corporation with unlimited legal resources." She wasn't wrong, but I also knew she didn't understand. "I need to do this," I said finally. "I need to know that what happened to us meant something, that there's some kind of accountability." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Okay, but promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you won't let this destroy what's left of us, what's left of you." I promised. I meant it when I said it. I had no idea what I was agreeing to. Before I tell you what happened when we met David Brenner and really started down this road, if you're hooked on this story, hit that like button and subscribe. There are dozens more voices like mine here. And drop a comment with your country. I'm curious where all of you are listening from. David Brenner's office was in one of those glass and steel buildings in downtown DC that screams expensive. His firm occupied 3 full floors. The waiting room had leather chairs that probably cost more than my truck, and art on the walls that I didn't understand but assumed was important. Chen and I sat there in our dress uniforms, him in his wheelchair, me trying not to favor my prosthetic, and felt completely out of place. Brenner himself was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the kind of energy that made you tired just watching him. He shook our hands, got Chen situated, and dove right in. "Gentlemen, I'm going to be direct with you. What happened to your unit was not an isolated incident. We have documentation of at least 47 similar failures of Titan's detector systems across 3 different theaters of operation. 12 of those incidents resulted in fatalities. 23 resulted in serious injuries." He pulled up a presentation on a screen that took up half the wall. Charts, graphs, technical schematics, numbers that I didn't fully understand, but that painted a clear picture. Titan Defense Solutions knowingly substituted inferior components in their detector systems after winning the military contract. The sensors they promised could detect metal at 50 meters actually topped out at around 20 meters, and even then with significant accuracy issues. They did this to cut costs by approximately 30% per unit. Given that they sold over 15,000 units to the DoD, we're talking about a profit increase of roughly $45 million. "How do you prove they knew," I asked, "that it wasn't just a mistake or a manufacturing defect?" Brenner smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Internal emails. We have a whistleblower, former engineer at Titan, who kept copies of everything. Design review meetings where executives explicitly discussed the trade-offs, cost-benefit analyses that literally calculated acceptable casualty rates versus profit margins." Chen's hands tightened on the armrests of his wheelchair. "They knew people would get hurt," he said quietly. "They knew people would die," Brenner corrected, "and they decided it was worth it. The legal department calculated potential lawsuit settlements would still be cheaper than using the proper components." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. It's one thing to die because of enemy action. That's the job. You sign up knowing the risks. But to die because someone in a boardroom decided your life was worth less than their profit margin? "What do you need from us?" I asked. "Your testimonies, your medical records, your service records. Everything. This is going to be a long fight. Titan has resources. They'll drag this out as long as possible, hoping you'll settle or give up. They'll investigate you, looking for anything they can use to discredit you. They'll make this as painful as they possibly can." "We're used to pain," Chen said quietly. "I believe you, but this is a different kind. This is having every decision you made that day questioned, having expert witnesses testify that maybe you didn't use the equipment properly, having lawyers imply that maybe the IED was placed specifically because you didn't vary your patrol routes enough. They'll go after your character, your service record, anything they can find." "Let 'em try," I said. Brenner studied me for a moment. "Captain Mitchell, I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we really go after them, it's going to change you. Fighting for justice is noble, but it's also exhausting and ugly, and it will cost you things you can't anticipate right now. I need to know you're ready for that." I looked at Chen. He looked at me. We'd been through worse, right? We'd been through actual war. "We're in," I said. That was 2.5 years ago. The first year was mostly discovery, depositions, document requests, expert witnesses. Brenner had a team of 6 lawyers working the case, plus paralegals and investigators. They were thorough. They were relentless. Titan fought back just as hard. They filed motion after motion to dismiss, to limit discovery, to prevent certain evidence from being admissible. Every step forward took months. My deposition lasted 3 days.
3 days of Titan's lawyers picking apart every decision I'd made, every order I'd given, every detail of my service record. They brought up a reprimand I'd received as a lieutenant for failing to properly secure equipment during a training exercise. They questioned whether my injury had affected my memory of events. They asked me to describe in excruciating detail what it felt like when the blast wave hit, what I saw, what I heard. On day 2, Sarah sat in the gallery. I'd told her she didn't have to be there, but she'd insisted. I watched her face as I described Rodriguez bleeding out, Chen screaming, the smell of burned flesh and explosives. I watched something in her expression close off, like a door shutting.
Chen's deposition was worse. They questioned whether his paralysis was really as severe as he claimed, whether he'd properly maintained the detector equipment, whether he'd been drinking the night before the patrol. Every question was designed to humiliate, to provoke, to find some crack they could exploit. But we held together, we told the truth, and slowly, painfully, Brenner's case came together. The whistleblower, a man named Dr. Raymond Keller, had been one of the lead engineers on the detector project. He'd objected to the component substitution in writing multiple times. He'd been overruled by the executive team and eventually forced out of the company. He'd kept everything. Emails, memos, technical reports, recordings of meetings. Brenner used that documentation to build an airtight case. Titan had known. They'd known and they'd done it anyway. Settlement offers started coming in around month 18. First offer was insultingly low, barely enough to cover medical expenses for the class members with a gag order attached. Brenner rejected it without even bringing it to us. Second offer was better, enough to make a difference, enough to make you think about taking it. "What do you think?" I asked Chen. We were in his apartment. He'd had to move out of his house after the divorce, into a ground-floor unit with wheelchair access. The place was depressingly bare. Furniture, sure, but no personal touches, like he was just waiting for something, though I wasn't sure what. "I think they're scared," Chen said. "They wouldn't be offering this much if they weren't. Brenner says if we push to trial, we could get 5 times this, maybe more. Could get nothing, too. Jury could side with them." I nodded. That was the gamble. Take the certainty now or risk everything for justice. Hayes' mom called me last week, asked if I thought we should settle. What'd you tell her? That it was her decision, that whatever she chose, I'd support. Chen was quiet for a moment. Rodriguez's family sent me a message through the victim advocate. They want to go to trial. They want Titan's executives to have to sit in that courtroom and hear what their cost-cutting did. So we go to trial. The final settlement offer came in at month 22. It was substantial. Life-changing amounts of money for everyone in the class, full medical coverage for life for the injured, college funds for the kids of those who'd been lost, and a public acknowledgement from Titan that their equipment had failed. No admission of wrongdoing, just an acknowledgement of failure. Brenner brought the offer to all of us, 37 class members, the injured, the families of the lost. He laid out the numbers, the terms, the risks of going to trial. This is more money than we're likely to get from a jury. It's guaranteed. If we go to trial, we could lose everything, or we could win big, but there's no guarantee. What about criminal charges? Someone asked. What about the executives who made these decisions? That's a separate issue. The DOJ is investigating, but I can't promise anything will come of it. This is a civil case. We're not going to see anyone go to jail from this. Then what's the point? Chen asked, and there was something broken in his voice. We bankrupt the company a little bit, take some money, and the guys who decided we were acceptable casualties walk away? Sometimes that's all you get, Brenner said quietly. I know it's not justice, not really, but it's something. The vote was close, 21 to 16 in favor of going to trial. Sarah was furious when I told her I'd voted to continue. What more do you need, James? You've already proven they were wrong. You've already won. Take the money. Move on with your life, with our life. It's not about the money. Then what is it about? Revenge? Making them suffer the way you've suffered? It's about accountability. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to someone else.
You can't save everyone. You couldn't save Hayes or Rodriguez, and you can't save every future soldier by bankrupting yourself trying to punish one company." The argument went on for hours. It ended with her sleeping in the guest room and me on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was right. Now, here's where everything changed. But real quick, if you're invested in how this ends, I genuinely appreciate a subscription. More soldier stories drop daily. Comment your country below. Always amazes me how far these reach.
Trial prep was intense. Brenner's team put us through mock trials, practice depositions, media training. Titan had hired one of the best defense firms in the country. This was going to be a war of attrition. The trial was set to begin on a Monday in October. Federal Courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia. Judge Patricia Morrison presiding, former Marine herself, known for running a tight courtroom and not tolerating nonsense from either side. The week before trial, Brenner sent over the final witness lists. Both sides were required to disclose who they'd be calling, what they'd be testifying about. Standard procedure. I was looking through Titan's list while eating dinner. Sarah and Emma were at her mother's for the week. Things at home had been tense when I saw it. Thomas Mitchell, board member, Titan Defense Solutions, expert witness on corporate governance and fiduciary responsibility. My father. I read the name 3 times, 4, 5. It didn't change. My phone rang. Brenner. "You saw the witness list?" "Yeah." My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. "James, I need you to talk to me. Did you know your father was on Titan's board?" "No. I had no idea. I didn't even know he was involved in defense contracting. He's a financial consultant, investments, retirement planning." "How long has it been since you talked to him?" That was a complicated question. My father and I were never close. He'd been against me joining the Marines, thought it was beneath me, that I was wasting my education. We'd barely spoken during my time in service. A few phone calls on holidays, awkward conversations where we both pretended the silence between us didn't hurt. "Not since before my injury," I said finally. "He sent a card while I was in Landstuhl. That's it." "He never mentioned Titan? Never serving on a defense contractor's board?" "Never." Brenner was quiet for a moment. "This is a problem. Can they even call him? Isn't there some kind of conflict of interest? He's not testifying about you. He's testifying about corporate decision-making processes, about how boards operate. Technically, it's allowed. But James, you need to understand what this looks like. Your father is going to sit on that stand and defend the company that cost you your leg." The implications settled over me like a weight. My own father, helping the people who'd let Hayes and Rodriguez die? Helping the people who'd put Chen in a wheelchair? I need to talk to him. I don't think that's a good idea right now. I don't care what you think. I need to talk to him. I called my mother first. She answered on the 3rd ring. "James, is everything okay? Is Emma?" "Everyone's fine, Mom. I need to ask you something. Did you know Dad was on the board of Titan Defense Solutions?" The pause told me everything I needed to know. "When were you going to tell me?" "It's complicated, sweetheart." "How is it complicated? The company I'm suing, the company responsible for my injury, for my friends' deaths, my father sits on their board? That seems pretty straightforward to me." "He didn't know you were involved in the lawsuit, not until recently. The legal team didn't share the names of the individual plaintiffs with the board, just the case details." "And when he found out?" Another pause. "He wanted to resign immediately, but the company's lawyers advised against it, said it would look like an admission of wrongdoing. So he chose them over me." "James, that's not fair. He's in an impossible position." "So am I. They're calling him as a witness, Mom. He's going to sit there and defend them. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what that says?" "Let me give you his number. Talk to him. He can explain better than I can." I took the number, stared at it for 20 minutes before I could make myself dial. He answered immediately, like he'd been waiting for my call. "James." "Dad." Silence. Years of it, compressed into a few seconds. I suppose you've seen the witness list. Why are you doing this? It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. Explain how you can sit on the board of the company that took my leg, that put my men in the ground. I joined the board 18 months ago, long after your injury, and I didn't know about the lawsuit until... Until when? Until they told you you'd have to testify against your own son? I'm not testifying against you. I'm testifying about corporate governance structures. It's technical testimony, James. It doesn't have anything to do with you personally. Everything about this has to do with me personally. Those detectors failed because your company cut corners. People died. Good people. My people. It's not my company. I'm just one board member among 9. And what do you do at board meetings when the topic of this lawsuit comes up? Do you abstain? Do you excuse yourself? Or do you sit there and help them figure out how to avoid accountability? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was different, quieter. I'm trying to help you. By testifying for the defense? That's a hell of a way to show it. There are things I can't explain over the phone, things you need to trust me about. Trust you? Dad, I haven't talked to you in 3 years. You didn't visit me in the hospital. You didn't come to Rodriguez's funeral or Hayes' memorial. You sent a card, 1 card, and now you want me to trust you? I know I haven't been the father you needed. I know I've failed you in more ways than I can count, but I'm asking you, begging you to trust me now. What I'm doing, it's for the right reasons. Then tell me what those reasons are. I can't, not yet, but after the trial, you'll understand. After the trial, after you've helped them win. James. I hung up. Sarah came home the next morning, took one look at me and knew something had happened. I told her about my father, about the witness list, about the phone call. She sat down heavily on the couch. Oh, James. Brenner says it doesn't change our case. Dad's testimony is about corporate governance, not the technical failures. But the jury's going to see my father defending Titan, and they're going to wonder. You could withdraw from the class, just you. Let Chen and the others continue? I'd thought about that. All night I'd thought about that. If I withdraw, Titan's lawyers will use it. They'll say I backed out because I knew the case was weak, because even my own family didn't believe in it. What are you going to do? I'm going to sit in that courtroom. I'm going to watch my father defend the company that destroyed my life, and then I'm going to win anyway. I need to tell you what happened next, but first, if this story's got you, show some love with a like and subscribe. I read every comment, especially love seeing where you're all from around the world. The trial began on a gray Monday morning. The courtroom was packed, class members, media, corporate representatives from Titan. I sat in the gallery with Chen, Sarah beside me, her hand in mine. Brenner's opening statement was devastating. He laid out the evidence piece by piece, the internal emails, the cost-benefit analyses, the technical data showing the detector failures, the whistleblower testimony, the human cost, 12 dead, 23 injured. He showed photos of Hayes and Rodriguez, young, smiling, alive. Then he showed medical photos of Chen in his hospital bed, of me in mine. Not gratuitous, just real. Titan Defense Solutions made a choice, Brenner told the jury. They chose profit over safety. They chose quarterly earnings over the lives of the men and women who serve this country, and they did it knowingly, deliberately, with full awareness of the consequences. Now it's time for them to answer for that choice. Titan's lead attorney, a woman named Victoria Sterling, who looked like she could cut you with her cheekbones, presented their defense. It was the same strategy we'd expected. The detectors functioned within normal parameters. The IED that took Hayes and Rodriguez was sophisticated, professionally constructed. Sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts, tragedy happens. She didn't deny that Titan had substituted components. She called it responsible stewardship of taxpayer money. It was impressive, in a soulless kind of way. The first 2 weeks were technical testimony. Engineers, military experts, IED specialists. Brenner walked the jury through exactly how the detectors were supposed to work and how Titan's modifications made them fail.
Titan's experts countered with their own data, their own interpretations. It was a war of credentials and statistics. Then came the human testimony. Chen testified for a full day. The jury watched this strong, proud Marine describe what it was like to wake up and realize he'd never walk again, to have his wife leave him, to face a future that looked nothing like what he'd planned. Titan's lawyers cross-examined him aggressively, tried to establish that maybe he'd been negligent in his equipment checks, maybe he'd been distracted, maybe the injury had affected his memory. Chen didn't break. He answered every question calmly, factually. By the end, even Sterling looked uncomfortable. I testified next, described the patrol, the detector sweep, the blast, described Hayes and Rodriguez, described the moment I looked down and saw where my leg used to be. "Captain Mitchell," Sterling said during cross-examination, "you've admitted that you were the commanding officer, ultimately responsible for your unit's safety. Is it possible that in your grief and trauma, you're looking for someone to blame besides yourself?"
Brenner objected. Judge Morrison sustained it, but the question was out there. "I blame the people who sold us faulty equipment," I said. "I blame the executives who chose profit over the lives of my Marines. And yeah, I blame myself too. I blame myself every day for trusting that the equipment would work the way we were told it would work." "But you don't know with certainty that the detector failed, do you? You can't say with absolute certainty that it wasn't user error or that the IED wasn't simply too well hidden. I know that we reported failures with those detectors 3 times before that patrol. I know that we were told the equipment was functioning normally. I know that Hayes is dead, and Rodriguez is dead, and Chen will never walk again. And I know that Titan's own internal documents show they knew these detectors didn't work as advertised. So yeah, I'm pretty certain." The families of Hayes and Rodriguez testified. That was the hardest part. Listening to Hayes's mother describe her son's dreams, his plans, who he might have become. Listening to Rodriguez's father struggle to speak through his grief. Titan tried to settle again during a recess in week 3, double the previous offer. Brenner brought it to us. "I'm not taking it," Chen said immediately. "Not now. Not after hearing them try to blame us for their failures." The other class members agreed. We were going to see this through. My father was scheduled to testify in week 4. I'd seen him in the courtroom a few times, sitting in the gallery on Titan's side. We hadn't made eye contact, hadn't spoken. Sarah thought I should talk to him before he testified, try to understand what he'd meant about helping me. I couldn't bring myself to do it. The morning he was called, I almost didn't go to court. Sarah had to convince me. "You need to be there," she said. "You need to hear whatever he's going to say, and he needs to see you there." He took the stand in a gray suit, looking older than I remembered. When had he gotten so much gray in his hair? Sterling walked him through his credentials. MBA from Wharton, 30 years in financial consulting, board positions on 4 different companies. She established his expertise in corporate governance. "Mr. Mitchell, in your experience serving on corporate boards, including Titan Defense Solutions, how are major operational decisions typically made?" Board members review proposals from executive leadership, examine financial data, consider risk assessments, and vote on whether to approve major initiatives. And in the case of product development or modification, would board members typically be involved in technical engineering decisions? No, board members aren't engineers. We rely on the expertise of the technical staff and executive leadership. She was building a case that the board couldn't have known about the specific component substitutions, that it was all executive-level decision-making below the board's purview. It was effective. I could see some of the jurors nodding along. "Mr. Mitchell, were you aware of the specific component substitutions in the metal detector systems before this lawsuit was filed?" "No, I was not." "Were you aware that there had been field failures of the detector systems?" "Not at the time, no." "So from your position as a board member, you had no reason to believe there were any problems with Titan's products?" My father paused. It was brief, maybe half a second, but I noticed it. "That's correct," he said. Sterling smiled. No further questions. Brenner stood for cross-examination. He approached the stand slowly,
carrying a folder. Mr. Mitchell, you testified that you weren't aware of the component substitutions. When did you first become aware of them? During the discovery phase of this lawsuit. And how did you react when you learned about them? My father glanced at me for the first time. I was disturbed. Disturbed enough to resign from the board? I considered it. But you didn't resign. No. Why not? Another pause. I was advised that my resignation could be seen as an admission of wrongdoing on behalf of the company. And you were concerned about protecting the company? I was concerned about not prejudicing the legal process. Brenner nodded slowly. Mr. Mitchell, you testified that board members weren't involved in technical engineering decisions, but you do review financial data, correct? Yes. And that would include cost savings from operational changes. Sometimes, yes.
Brenner pulled a document from his folder. I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 47. This is a board meeting summary from approximately 2 years ago. Do you recognize it? My father studied the document. Yes. Can you read the highlighted section for the jury? COO reported significant cost savings achieved through supply chain optimization in detector manufacturing. Board commended management team for improving margins. So the board, including you, was aware of cost savings in detector manufacturing. We were aware of cost savings, not the specific methods used to achieve them. Did anyone on the board ask what supply chain optimization meant specifically? My father's jaw tightened. Not that I recall. Isn't it true, Mr. Mitchell, that board members have a fiduciary duty to understand major operational changes that affect product quality and safety? Yes, but... And isn't it true that you failed in that duty by not asking the obvious questions about how costs were being cut? Objection, Sterling called. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. Rephrase, Mr. Brenner. Mr. Mitchell, with the benefit of hindsight, do you believe the board should have investigated the methods used to achieve these cost savings? My father looked directly at me again. Something in his expression I couldn't read. Yes, he said quietly. We should have. It wasn't much, but it was something. Brenner pushed harder. You mentioned you joined Titan's board 18 months ago. What prompted you to join? I was recruited by the chairman. And what attracted you to serving on this particular board? The company was in a growth phase. It seemed like a good opportunity. Did it have anything to do with the fact that your son was injured by one of Titan's products? Sterling shut up. Objection, that's completely improper. Judge Morrison looked at Brenner sharply. Mr. Brenner, where are you going with this? Your Honor, the defense has called this witness to establish the board's ignorance of the product defects. I'm entitled to explore his motivations for joining the board and his actions since joining. I'll allow it, but tread carefully. Brenner turned back to my father. Mr. Mitchell, when did you learn that your son was one of the plaintiffs in this lawsuit? About 3 months ago. And what was your reaction? My father's hands gripped the armrests of the witness stand. I was horrified. Horrified by the lawsuit? Horrified by what I learned about what happened to my son, what the company I was serving had done. The courtroom went very quiet. And yet you remain on the board. Yes. Why? My father looked at Sterling, then at the judge, then back at Brenner. Because I believed I could be more helpful from the inside than the outside. Sterling was on her feet. Your Honor, I need to confer with my witness. Too late for that, Judge Morrison said. The witness will answer the question. Mr. Mitchell, what do you mean by helpful from the inside? My father took a breath. When he spoke, his voice was steady but quiet. I mean that when I discovered the full extent of what Titan had done, the component substitutions, the deliberate decision to sell equipment they knew was faulty, I had a choice. I could resign in protest, make a statement, wash my hands of it, or I could stay on the board and make sure the truth came out. Your Honor, Sterling was nearly shouting, I need to confer with my witness immediately. This is denied, Continue, Mr. Mitchell. I've been providing documents to the plaintiff's legal team, board meeting minutes, financial records, internal communications that weren't covered by their initial discovery requests, anything I could access that showed the board's knowledge and complicity. The courtroom erupted. Sterling was arguing for a mistrial. The Titan executives in the gallery were on their feet. Judge Morrison was hammering her gavel. I sat there frozen as the implications washed over me. My father hadn't betrayed me. He'd been helping us all along. It took 20 minutes for Judge Morrison to restore order. She cleared the courtroom except for the lawyers, the parties, and the jury. My father remained on the stand. Mr. Mitchell, the judge said, her voice cold as ice, are you telling this court that you've been acting as an informant for the plaintiffs while serving on the defendant's board? Yes, Your Honor. Were you aware that this conduct likely violates your fiduciary duties to Titan Defense Solutions? Yes, Your Honor. Were you aware that you could face civil and possibly criminal liability for this conduct? Yes, Your Honor. Sterling was furious. Your Honor, this witness's entire testimony should be stricken. He's admitted to acting in bad faith, to violating his duties to my client. Nothing he said can be trusted. Brenner stood. Your Honor, Mr. Mitchell's personal legal jeopardy doesn't change the authenticity of the documents he's provided. Documents that, I should note, have all been verified through other sources. His testimony simply confirms what we've already proven, that Titan's board was aware of the cost-cutting measures and chose to prioritize profits over safety. Judge Morrison rubbed her temples. We're going to take a recess. Mr. Mitchell, you're to remain available. Ms. Sterling, Mr. Brenner, in my chambers, now. The recess lasted 2 hours. When we reconvened, Judge Morrison had made her ruling. Mr. Mitchell's testimony regarding the board's awareness of cost savings stands. His admission of providing documents to the plaintiffs is a separate matter that will be dealt with separately. This trial will continue. My father was excused from the stand. As he walked past our table, he looked at me. I didn't know what to do, what to say. Sarah grabbed my hand. Go talk to him. I found him in the hallway outside the courtroom. He was leaning against the wall, looking exhausted. Dad. He straightened. James. We stood there, two strangers who shared blood and history and pain. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. I couldn't risk it. If Titan's lawyers had found out, they could have shut down my access. Anything I'd provided could have been challenged as tainted. Brenner agreed. The fewer people who knew, the better. Brenner knew? This whole time? He's the one who contacted me. About 6 months after I joined the board, he'd been investigating all of Titan's board members, looking for someone who might be sympathetic, found out about you, about what happened, approached me quietly. And you agreed to help? I agreed to do what I should have done 3 years ago, be there for my son. I didn't know what to say to that. 3 years of silence, of distance, of assuming the worst about him. I'm sorry, he said, for not being there when you were injured, for not visiting, not calling. I told myself I was giving you space, that you'd made it clear you didn't want me in your life. But the truth is, I was a coward. I didn't know how to face what had happened to you. And by the time I realized what a mistake that was, too much time had passed. You could have told me after you started helping Brenner. Could I? What would you have said if I'd told you I'd joined the board of the company that cost you your leg? Would you have believed I was trying to help, or would you have assumed the worst? He was right. I would have assumed the worst. I had assumed the worst. The documents you provided, how much difference did they make? Brenner says they were crucial. Board meeting minutes that showed we'd been briefed on quality control issues, financial projections that explicitly calculated savings from component substitutions, email chains between board members discussing whether to launch an internal investigation and deciding against it. You gave us everything. I gave you what you deserved, what Hayes and Rodriguez and Chen deserved, what all of you deserved. We were quiet for a moment. I'm going to lose my position on the board, he said, probably face a lawsuit from Titan for breach of fiduciary duty,
maybe worse. Was it worth it? He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something like pride in his eyes. You're my son. Of course it was worth it. The trial lasted 2 more weeks. Titan's defense crumbled after my father's testimony. The documents he'd provided filled in the gaps, proved the board's knowledge and complicity. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts of negligence and product liability. Compensatory damages, $847 million to be split among the class members. Punitive damages, $2.3 billion. Titan Defense Solutions filed for bankruptcy 3 months later. The money didn't bring back Hayes or Rodriguez, didn't give Chen his legs back, or me mine, but it meant their families were taken care of. It meant the injured had their medical bills covered for life. It meant Titan's executives faced consequences. The Department of Justice filed criminal charges against 4 Titan executives 2 weeks after the verdict. My father testified at those trials too. All 4 were convicted. Prison sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. My father lost his position on every board he'd served on. Titan sued him for $50 million for breach of fiduciary duty. That case is still pending, but his lawyers think they can get it dismissed or settled for a fraction of that amount given the circumstances. He and I have dinner once a month now. It's still awkward sometimes. We're still figuring out how to be father and son after all these years of distance, but we're trying.
Sarah and I are trying too. The trial took a toll on our marriage. I'd been so focused on justice that I'd neglected everything else. We're in counseling now. Some days are better than others. Emma's 9 now, and she started asking questions about what happened to me, about the trial, about what it all means. I don't have good answers for her yet. Chen used part of his settlement to start a foundation that provides support for disabled veterans. He's doing better, seeing someone, talking about the future instead of just surviving the present. I took a portion of my settlement and bought into a prosthetics company that's developing better, more affordable devices for veterans, trying to turn what happened to me into something that helps others. My father is an investor too. The lawsuit destroyed the company that destroyed my life, but it also destroyed my relationship with my wife, cost my father his career, and took years of my life that I'll never get back. Was it worth it? I think about that question every day. Every time I strap on my prosthetic, every time I see Chen in his wheelchair, every time I drive past the cemetery where Hayes and Rodriguez are buried. I got justice. Real, tangible justice, accountability, consequences. But justice doesn't fill the empty chair at Thanksgiving. Justice doesn't make the phantom pain go away. Justice doesn't give you back the years you lost to anger and litigation and the grinding machinery of the legal system. Here's what I learned. Sometimes the right thing to do costs you everything. Sometimes the truth does set you free, but it also chains you to a new weight you'll carry forever. Sometimes you win and lose at the same time, and you have to find a way to live in that contradiction. My lawyer said we'd destroy the company that destroyed my life. We did. But in the process, I had to destroy parts of myself too. I had to learn that my father, who I'd written off as indifferent and absent, loved me enough to risk everything. I had to learn that marriage takes work even when you're fighting for justice. I had to learn that winning doesn't feel the way you think it will. The night after the verdict, I sat in my truck in the courthouse parking lot for 2 hours. Just sat there, engine off, staring at nothing. Sarah called 3 times. Brenner called twice. Chen sent a text asking if I was okay. I didn't answer any of them. Because I'd spent 2.5 years working toward this moment, this victory, this vindication, and now that it was here, all I felt was empty. Hayes was still gone, Rodriguez was still gone, Chen was still in a wheelchair. I still woke up in the middle of the night, my brain insisting that my missing leg was on fire. The money would help. The accountability mattered, but it didn't fix anything. Couldn't fix anything. I drove home eventually. Sarah was waiting up. She didn't ask where I'd been, just held me while I cried for the first time since the injury. "We won," I said. "I know," she said. "Then why does it feel like I lost?" She didn't have an answer for that. I'm not sure there is one. 6 months after the trial ended, I got a letter. No return address, postmarked from somewhere in Nebraska. Inside was a single photograph, Hayes in his dress uniform before deployment. On the back, in handwriting I recognized from the cards she'd sent during the trial, his mother had written, "Thank you for remembering my son, for fighting for him. He would have been proud to serve under you." I keep that photo on my desk, next to one of Rodriguez that his father sent me, next to a picture of Chen and me from before, when we were both whole. Reminders of what the fight was really about. Not the money, not the victory, but the men who deserved better than what they got. Sometimes I wonder what they would think about how it all turned out, about the trial, the verdict, the aftermath. I like to think they'd understand, that they'd see the cost and the gain and the complicated mess of it all, and they'd understand. But I'll never know for sure. That's the thing about the people we lose. We carry them with us, but we can't ask them if we're doing right by their memory. We just have to try our best and hope it's enough. My father and I were having one of our monthly dinners last week when he asked me a question. If you could go back, knowing everything you know now about what the lawsuit would cost you, would you still do it? I thought about Sarah, about the strain on our marriage, about the years consumed by litigation, about my father's destroyed career, and about the hollow feeling I'd had after the verdict. Then I thought about Titan's executives in prison, about the families who'd gotten some measure of closure, about Chen's foundation helping other disabled vets, about the fact that Titan would never sell another faulty piece of equipment to another soldier. "Yeah," I said, "I would. Even knowing the price. Especially knowing the price, because now I know it was worth paying." He nodded slowly. "I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you." Coming from him, after everything, those words meant something. We finished dinner, talked about Emma's upcoming birthday, about his legal case, about nothing in particular. As we were leaving, he put his hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for giving me a chance to make things right. I know it doesn't erase the years I wasn't there, but thank you for letting me be there now." "He risked everything," I said. "Your career, your reputation, your freedom, for me. You're my son. What else would I do?" I hugged him. First time in more than a decade. Some wounds heal, some don't. But sometimes you find unexpected ways to live with the scars. That's the truth I learned from all of this. Justice isn't clean or simple or satisfying the way you think it will be. It's messy and complicated, and it costs you things you didn't expect to pay. But sometimes, it's still worth it. Sometimes, fighting for what's right is enough, even when it costs you everything.